Welcome to the Associated Guest. I, as always, am your host, Alfie Animus, here at the Bear in Mind channel. Today, running a little late, not gonna lie. So we're gonna take a quick look at what Steven Crowder's prescriptions on how do we fix this? How do we get back to a place where we can at least tolerate each other? Remember tolerance? Yeah, so how do we do that? So let's go ahead and get into it.
Tribalism? I don't only think it's good. I think it's necessary. I'd like to take.
I don't know how I feel about that, but I'll hear him out.
I want to take a minute here to make a case to you, because we see a lot of infighting on the right and people wondering about the future of the direction of the country. Thinking about it a lot during the break. Look, it comes down to this. You hear the word all the time, tribalism, right? It's often used as a pejorative to denigrate. You'll hear people, sort of extol the notion that, it's those in power, man. They just want us warring, man. Tribalism is to keep us fighting and not going after those in power, man. You got to stop the tribalism. That's wrong. Because the most important thing that those on the right, that conservatives, those who support America First, the MAGA movement, the most important thing that all of us can do is oppose leftists as a group, as a tribe. Tribalism means, by definition, that you have a strong in-group loyalty, often combined with a negative view of outsiders. As to the future of this country, tribalism is good.
And again, I don't agree with that. I think to an extent, on a smaller scale, maybe, it's good to be tribal, have tribalism for your family, per se. You should always stand, well, unless... And even that, I got pushed back. But, I don't know. I don't see it that way. But again, I'm going to hear him out for the best of it. I think tribalism is what got us into this a lot. And again, most of what the left represents these days is they've gone so far against the people who used to, or still technically are, but in power. It's mostly just a group of people who like, hey, you hate Christian conservatives? Me too. Let's be friends. And then they don't even stop to think their drive and their hatred for said groups kind of blind them to the fact that they don't really like each other either. This is how you get all these, the Palestinian, the Free Palestine movement, how you get all these people, you get the LGBT community, and you get Sharia law following Islamists. These are not two people who will be able to live together. Say the right's gone. The right gives up. They become the left. They follow along. They go fully silent, or whatever. Other things happen. Now what happens? More fighting. That's my biggest thing. You have to realize sometimes the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. I'm saying.
Tribalism is necessary.
But that's what I'm saying when it comes to Steven Crowder. I think it is good to unify, especially if you're a party or a group of people or whatever, but at what cost? As long as you are still being objective when it comes to all of these political prescriptions, all of these thoughts and policies and all this, then sure. But the second that you give way to any of your ideals or anything that's not for the betterment of the country as a whole and not just you and your friends, I think that's where we lose it. We need the balance. The balance is always important. We can't have this constant warring. We have to be able to live together. I know I sound all hippy-dippy and shit, and I hate saying shit like this, but it's getting to a point. And I don't know if it's getting to a point because I remember hearing people arguing during the original Bush and Clinton administrations when I was a kid, and I was back there thinking about fucking Animaniacs and Power Rangers and shit. Like, I didn't know what these people were talking about. And I only knew politics through what I heard through comedians. And I made the mistake of saying, what did Clinton do that was so bad in front of my friend's very conservative mom? Ironically, she's now a radical liberal. Funny how that happens.
The only thing that really remains is determining what our tribe is and who is outside of it. Let me explain why. I know you can certainly find disagreements on any notable issue of the day, be it cultural, economic, social. For example, right now there are plenty of black people who supported George Floyd, for example, who believe that the reaction to Renee Good's death is inconsistent because no one would protest if a black person was shot by cops who was resisting arrest. Of course, that's wrong, and that's a common theme you'll see
Okay,
with a lot of these small.
I'll agree with that. It is kind of hilarious how George Floyd was just a few short years ago, and people like I can't remember the name of the gentleman who was shot on New Year's Eve because he was shooting a rifle into the air, an AR-15 style rifle into the air on New Year's Eve, and an ICE person happened to be living nearby or staying nearby, and there was a confrontation, and people are saying that because we didn't hear about it, it's a race thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, because that thing that didn't happen 5 years ago, when in reality, there are now, I believe, 7 angles of Renee Good's murder. That's why people are talking about it, because there's so much footage, because it happened in the middle of the day, surrounded by a bunch of iPhone and Android carrying lunatics, to include the ICE officer who shot and also shot footage of said incident. But yeah, that's why we're talking about it.
The uncommon sort of divergence in opinion. I'll give you some more examples. There are some of those on the Democrat left who support Israel, for example, and there are some of those on the right who don't. There are some on the Democrat left who support strong Second Amendment protections. There are some on the right who may be ambivalent. And it's not lost on me, these numbers don't exist in especially small numbers, by the way. But they are not the majority. Rarely, if ever. These outliers are just that, outliers, but an overwhelming preponderance of data, history, real-world results at this point show us that the major issues of our day break down into overwhelming majorities of 2 distinct worldviews, left and right, in a way that cannot be seen across any other primary groups, no matter how you divide or categorize people. So yes, the left will, as a majority, support extreme forms of abortion. The right, as a majority, will not. The majority of the left will support erosion of our immigration laws. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will actively oppose deportations of illegal aliens. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will oppose the building, for example, of a border wall. We saw that. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support forms of censorship or hate speech regulation, as sometimes or often justified. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support experimental sexuality, gender, including, by the way, transitioning of children. Majority of the left. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support teaching public curriculums that paint America as the villains of history, more guilty than other nations to have come before us. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support significant erosions and ultimately the stripping of your Second Amendment rights. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will have favorable views of socialism. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support more government control over children in comparison and in lieu of their parents. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will hold negative views of traditional Christianity. The majority of the right will not.
And that whole thing with parents, people being okay with governments taking control of people's kids, it has kind of spiraled out of control. And like many things, it started off with good intentions. If you know someone's being abused, you can take steps to correct that. But for the most part, it's just turned into a thing that is now popular and deemed good or bad. Parent goes against what mass consensus is, so we take kid from parent. And this is especially prominent in bigger cities, usually on the coast. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But I don't know. I see it more and more, and I've heard through friends of mine who I've met throughout my long life of doing crazy shit. It's kind of insane, but like most things, it starts with good intentions, and we have to really be careful of the wording, especially when ascribing to law. I think we have to consider it the same way, like a wish being made on a djinn, or like what's the movie Wishmaster, or a monkey's paw situation. You have to write laws keeping these kinds of things in mind, to where the definition of such is airtight and can't be delineated from what the actual definition of what you're trying to say is.
Not. The majority of the left will support feminism, more specifically the upending of traditional gender norms. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support forms of DEI, race or gender-based quotas, hiring practices. The majority of the will not. The majority of the left will support removal of historical American Christian symbolism, including but not limited to monuments, documents, and even wording. The majority of the right will not.
Which is crazy. Like, do you remember 5 or 10 years ago, there was the whole pushback against the Confederate flag? Hey, shapeshifter, good to see you. There's the whole pushback against the Confederate flag. It got so crazy that it was like the Dukes of Hazzard was taken off streaming. There's a character in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. He's supposed to be a caricature of a gun-toting Confederate, for some reason living in California. But that's who he is. He's supposed to be a despicable character. They edited him. Some of his words, but they edited the Confederate flag from his shirt because they deemed it offensive. It was there to push thought. It was there to be a caricature of said type of people. If you take away the thing that makes them who they are, then they're no longer a caricature. So in doing so, you're defeating your own argument. You're in the game, you're trying to say that people who would wear the Confederate flag are not good humans. But by taking the Confederate flag off of his shirt, you're taking away your whole argument. He's just some random asshole named whatever his name was in the thing. Oh my God, Blaine. Oh, yeah, stuff like that. Blaming the husband over wives. Oh, I saw that story. That's not what we're going to be talking about today, but I am going to bring that up on a later show. I haven't watched that video yet, but it seemed interesting.
Majority of the left will support extreme environmental restrictions on your daily life, including but not limited to what kind of car you can drive, what kind of food you can eat, etc. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support affirmative action in education. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support increases in almost all significant taxes outside of the poverty income bracket.
And again, I am okay with the idea of affirmative action. It's very good policy, and it was necessary to make sure that people who weren't white got their foot in the door. But the extent that they're taking it these days, they're not looking to make sure people are well educated. They're not willing to do the legwork, and this is the problem with the government. Okay, they're either all the way this way or all the way that way. There is no between. In the case of affirmative action, it started off good. It was a wonderful thing. If not for it, a lot of us wouldn't have the friends that we have these days. People wouldn't be in the relationships that they're in. But on the other end of things, and we'll take the thing that comes up when it comes to Charlie Kirk after his death, that people used to say that he's racist. It was pushed so fast that they wanted to reach their racial quotas so fast that they didn't take test scores into account, that they didn't take people's actual academics into account, people's how they did on whatever test you have to do to become a pilot. What they did take into account was your race. And you see this when it comes to there's a judge, actually the judge who presided over the Charlotte, North Carolina stabbing, Irina Zarutska. The judge who let the guy off, I think it was 12 times. It was a lot. It was way too many. She had never passed the bar. I don't know if that's a requirement to become a judge, but for the most part, you should probably pass the bar, as far as I know. I'm not familiar with the judge being an elected position, but for the most part, most people I know who have become judges usually were attorneys at some time. Usually a prosecutor that worked for the city, or the public defendant who worked for the city. Public defender, sorry. But that's what I'm saying. If you put people into positions that they didn't earn, didn't achieve themselves, not only do you put the public perception of said group to where they can't do the job, because if they didn't score the test, then they're not going to do as good of a job. So that's going to put, over time, stigma on that particular group, especially if you let it know that this kind of stuff is happening. And at the same time, that person is not going to know whether or not they actually earned that job. You see what I'm saying here? But anyway, it's so anyway, yeah. So I kind of see where he's going with that one, at least.
The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support the policy or the idea that those in the poverty bracket not be required to contribute anything to taxes and be net drains. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will oppose work requirements for welfare, social safety net benefits. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will support the use of said benefits for sugary soda drinks. The majority of the right will not. The majority of the left will oppose voter identification. The majority of the right will not.
And the voter ID thing is retarded. I'll just say it straight out. The fact that we're the only country in the world, the only civilized country in the world, that doesn't require voter ID. This is retarded. For one, how do you know that this person is who they say they are? Do you just let anyone who comes in vote? Is that your purpose the whole time? And these are the questions that people ask when stuff like this happens, especially when they're in sanctuary cities. So you can understand how a conservative would come to the conclusion that all these people that you let live in your city, and some of them even given driver's licenses or commercial driver's license that allows you to drive across state lines for whatever company you're going to be working for, which led to the deaths of several people this past year. It befuddles me, we'll say, and that's a word that doesn't get used enough. And the fact that they say that they're racist, that voter ID laws are racist, and when you ask people why they're racist, then they say some really disgusting things about the intellectual capacity of the people who they're saying they're there to protect. They're saying that they don't have access. They don't know how to use the internet. It's so weird and scary. And you ask anybody from said group, and they're like, huh? Man, I've had internet for 20 years, or I've done this, or yeah, the DMV's just right around the corner. Why are you asking me for? It's again, retarded.
The majority of the left will, when polled, and I will make all of these results available to you. Check the link in the description. The majority of the left will support use of violence as a means of political resistance or a readily available tool for political change. The majority of the right will not. And all of the above, by the way, all of those issues have polling demonstrating an overwhelming majority split on both sides, meaning that on all issues, you'll see a majority of leftists and conservatives being for or opposed, respectively. For context, if you look at those polls, check the references, to the tune of about 60 to 90%, as far as a majority of the left, majority of the right in support or opposition, respectively. What that means is that if you were to make a bet and you were to attribute an abhorrent or simply wrong view to any particular group, if you simply bet leftist every time, you would be correct at least 60 to 90% of the time. This is very important because it helps you understand and identify the enemy. And I'm using my language very thoughtfully and carefully. Yes, enemy. For every issue at which the thread of Americanism, the very core of Americanism is being pulled, yanked, torn, for every person seeking to destroy the very foundation that makes this nation singularly unique and admirable, if you believe it, for every instance, 55, 60 to 90% of the time, you will find a leftist pulling at that thread. They are the only ones who can truly destroy the country. They are the only ones who have both the corrosive views of the world and the numbers or means with which to accomplish their goals.
I don't disagree with the data facts of what he's saying. Look, and as much as I try my best to hate people, I don't know if it's just that I'm getting older and I want, I don't know, America, as troubled as we are, and we do have lots of troubles, we are, this experiment that we're doing is one of the only real bastions of freedom that's left in the world. And my belief is there are those who would seek to end that experiment. They want us to believe that we can't coexist. We can. We've done it before. We've done it for years. We've bickered. and a lot of my friends who believe in that we're in the Matrix, simulation theory, we'll laugh at this, but I really do think that this is all puppet theater. That the groups that are in charge of the left and the right are literally trying to pull us apart and just to see how much we can deal with before we pop. It's the old where the gladiator arenas of old on a much broader scale. The more surveillance that gets put in, they want to see how much we can get us to vote against our own existence. And to use the sins of the past, the sins of the father, as it were, in many examples, is it's kind of brilliant, but at the same time, it's terrifying. I really do think that this is all just a show, and we're the collateral. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm retarded. Tell me how retarded I am down in the comments.
And this brings us back to tribalism. Look, you cannot fight one giant unified tribe with smaller unallied factions. You have to form an equally large, if ideally larger tribe, a unified tribe. Historically, let me make this clear. Historically, those with no tribe are slaves. Serfs at best. Slaves most of the time. So the question becomes...
And see, I disagree for two reasons. One, most of the people who became slaves were in tribes. And two, because of what I just said before he said that. I think that we are slaves to the algorithm. I think we're slaves to the political affiliations that we hold, which is why I don't hold any. I say what I think, and you can take that for what it is. I do think one side is a bit more heinous at this particular moment in time. I think it's the most heinous that any political party has ever been. But that being said, I can't guarantee, especially the way things are going, that if certain people get put into the power positions of the opposition to said people, that they won't just do the very same thing. And the fear of that is what makes a lot of these people, is what makes them do what they do, honestly. It's bewildering to me.
Are the remaining 10 to 30% of issues on which you may diverge with some on the right worth willingly handing power over to the left? If not, then you need to join a tribe. As a conservative, now look, I significantly diverge with the left on serious issues that are foundational to America in a way that cannot be said of any other class by which I may divide or delineate myself, be it income, class, age, race, professional field, degree of education, religion, or even gender. You would not find that consistent disagreement and split with a group that has an overwhelming majority opposed to what I believe than the left. There would be no other way. No other group. Now, that doesn't mean, just to be clear, doesn't mean that you have to agree with the right on everything. No one is expected to. It doesn't even mean that you shouldn't disagree and hold those on the political right, conservative, MAGA, America First, accountable. You are expected to.
Yes.
As your duty to operate within and improve the tribe. But you, everyone here, we are still precluded from linking arms with today's political left.
I agree with a bit of what he said there. Yes. And this is something that you won't hear from a lot of political affiliates. You should stand up against the tribe to which you ascribe if you disagree with something that they're doing, but not disagree with it enough to go to the other side. You should have disagreements, but you should have communication and talk about said disagreements so you come to a mutual understanding or even a change in the way you see things or agree to disagree. But communication is always key. You have to talk about things. If not, then nothing's ever going to fucking change and we're just going to throw rocks at each other until it's like playing dodgeball. Eventually, there's only going to be one side left, and that side wins. We can't just hurl rocks and insults at each other. Insults, sure. But eventually, there's not going to be anything left. We can't carry on this way. And if people break the law, even if they hold your political affiliation, you have to prosecute them. If they assault people in the streets at some of these protests, you have to be honest with the fact that most protests turn into riots, or at least in this day and age. You can't say mostly peaceful protest while there's a building on fire behind you on the video. You can't. You have to acknowledge the downside and you have to speak out against it of your own side, or else people aren't going to take you seriously, except for the people who are there behind you burning shit down. And that's not what either side wants. Look, I'm not going to be able to finish this video. I got a late start again. I know, big shock, surprising. But it's just, this is a really good video, and I might continue it later. I'm going to put it in my things. And, yeah. But, look, just know, at the end of the day, especially if you're an activist, if you're out there protesting, if you're like Mr. Crowder here, or even someone who doesn't really have a big voice. I have just a handful of people in here right now, and a couple handfuls of people view these afterwards. Sometimes I've gotten as many as a few hundred. Those are good days. But just know what you do and say matters, especially when you do it on the public stage. It's like when you go somewhere with your family And they just, they tell you before you go out, just don't embarrass the family. Don't act a fool. I'll whoop your ass when we get to the house. It shouldn't be to that extent, but you should. But the reason people do that, at least the reason why a lot of people do that, is so people don't think that you're this or that. When it comes to the party, when it comes to politics, you have to do what you can to be as come together as possible. It's okay to not like people. I don't know if I'd go as far to say as it's okay to hate people, but it's okay to like what you like, and it's okay to not like what you don't like. But it shouldn't go any further than that. You cannot harm people. You can't ruin people's lives for believing differently than you. And I say this to my friends who are still on the hard left. To those of you who click on the links that I put on my personal Facebook page. Look, you can't become the very thing that you hate. And even though a lot of you will tell me, well, Anakin Skywalker did and he redeemed himself. Shut up. Okay, don't try to out-nerd me. Look, you can't become the very thing that you hate. You shouldn't seek to destroy anything. But if you counter someone who you deem as evil because this or that happened in the name of this, and you hate everyone in that group, then you're no different than the racist bigots that you claim to hate so much. You've let them make you what they are. Someone who hates someone because of something that that particular person didn't do, based on something that they can't help. Skin color, gender, orientation, whatever. And then where are you at? You're making people on the other side hate you even more. And it spirals out of control. And then someone like Trump happens, and then it just spirals even more. As much as I hate to say it, the arrogance that came around 2010 created the drive for Donald Trump to become president. A certain Joe Biden saying that someone is milquetoast and as much of a pussy as Mitt Romney will put black people back in chains, as he pitched while talking to, I think it was the Black Caucus in Congress. That kind of rhetoric for someone as feeble as a Mitt Romney, where do you think that leads? It leads to the very next time your party goes against Donald Trump. And the thing that put me onto Trump was how he tore through the RNC. He destroyed them. It was a multiple KO. He killed, verbally assaulted Jeb Bush and all the other retards there on stage. Said some classic lines, some lines that even got liberals' attention. And a lot of that is where the hatred for him comes, because they feared that he'd do that to them, and he did. He did the same thing to Hillary on stage, and did a little bit to Biden. He's gotten a little crazier since then, but, I don't ascribe to any particular person. I don't ascribe to any particular political party. And I certainly don't go to the Golden Hedgehogs, because those guys are basically the bigger lunatic retard people who were cast off of the main two parties, which, considering where the main two parties are at right now, is fucking scary. I can't remember who the third party was. Gary Johnson, I think. That motherfucker. As much as I like his campaign slogan, they said, "Feel the burn" for Bernie Sanders, so he said, "Feel the Johnson." I thought that was hilarious till I looked into him, and then I was like, God damn. But anyway, I'm running late. I apologize, but just think about it. Hatred's only going to beget more hatred. Violence is only going to beget more violence. We've seen it happen in real time over the last 12 plus years. And I'm exhausted. And although I still look good for my age, by God, inside I feel like the withered old man from The Simpsons. But I don't know. I'm gonna end it with that because I got no good way to dismount off this shit. But just we'll see you guys tomorrow, and who knows? I might even jump on and game one of these nights. But until then, just think about what you do. Don't give in to hatred of the other side. If you don't like when the other side does it to you, don't do it back. If someone attacks you, defend yourself. By all means, don't just sit there and take it. But do not give them a reason. And definitely don't instigate. Talk shit. I do it all the time. Fuck them. But everyone knows where the line is. And on that, I'll leave you until tomorrow. Take care of yourself. And each other.